Sometimes the cheapest price we pay turns out to be the most expensive. Maya Rodriguez clutched the crumpled deed in her trembling hands as she stood before the towering gates of Mercy General Hospital. The rusted chain that had sealed the entrance for 36 years lay broken at her feet, though she was certain it had been intact when she'd driven past yesterday. At 8 months pregnant, and with only $47 left in her checking account, the $20 purchase at the county tax auction had seemed like a miracle, a chance to give her unborn daughter something resembling a home. The November wind carried the scent of antiseptic, and something else she couldn't place. Something that reminded her of the NICU where she'd worked before her world fell apart. As she pushed open the heavy oak doors, expecting darkness and decay, warm light spilled out onto the cracked concrete steps. Inside, classical music played softly from hidden speakers, and the lobby gleamed as if housekeeping had just finished their evening rounds. Maya's breath caught in her throat. The marble floors she'd expected to find cracked and stained with decades of neglect reflected her stunned expression like mirrors. Fresh white lilies arranged in crystal vases adorned the reception desk, their petals still dewy, their fragrance mixing with that clinical smell that had haunted her dreams for months. This was impossible. She stepped inside, her worn sneakers squeaking against the pristine floor, and let the doors swing shut behind her with a soft pneumatic hiss. The sound triggered a muscle memory so sharp it made her dizzy. How many times had she hurried through similar doors during her 3 years as a pediatric nurse? Before the lawsuit, before Marcus left, before her entire life crumbled like the foundation she'd thought this place would have. "Hello?" Her voice echoed through the spacious lobby, traveling up the grand staircase that curved toward the second floor like something from a luxury hotel rather than a rural Pennsylvania hospital that had supposedly been abandoned since 1987. No answer came, but somewhere in the distance, she could swear she heard the familiar beeping of heart monitors. Maya fumbled for her phone, hands shaking as she speed-dialed the county clerk's office. The call went straight to voicemail. Of course it did. It was past 6 on a Friday, and government employees didn't work overtime to soothe the paranoid fears of desperate pregnant women who made impulsive real estate decisions. She approached the reception desk cautiously, noting how the computer terminals displayed screensavers that cycled through serene nature scenes. The screens were modern, LCD displays that definitely hadn't existed in 1987. A clipboard sat beside the keyboard, its top sheet filled with today's date and a list of patient names written in neat cursive. Maya's eyes scanned the list, looking for some explanation, some sign of who might be maintaining this place. Her own name stared back at her from the bottom of the list. Rodriguez Maya Elena, room 347. Obstetrics. The clipboard clattered to the floor as Maya stumbled backward, her hand instinctively moving to her swollen belly. The baby kicked, as if responding to her mother's spike of adrenaline. Maya had been careful not to use her full name during the auction. She'd learned to be cautious about leaving paper trails after the malpractice suit. Only her closest family knew her middle name, and she hadn't spoken to them in months. A soft chime echoed through the lobby, followed by a woman's voice over the intercom. "Dr. Chen to labor and delivery." "Dr. Chen to labor and delivery, please." Maya's blood turned to ice water. Dr. Chen had been her obstetrician, before she could no longer afford private insurance, before she'd been forced to switch to the overcrowded county clinic, where they treated her like a case number instead of a person. She needed to leave. Now. Whatever elaborate prank or psychological experiment this was, she wanted no part of it. Maya turned toward the entrance, but the doors that had opened so easily moments before now remained firmly sealed, despite her desperate pushing and pulling. The electronic lock blinked red, and a small placard beside it read, "Visiting hours end at 6 p.m. Please check with the front desk for overnight arrangements." "This isn't real," she whispered, pressing her forehead against the cool glass. Through the doors, she could see her battered Honda Civic in the parking lot, looking impossibly far away. The early November darkness was settling over the overgrown grounds, and the parking lot's sodium lights flickered to life with automatic precision. Another intercom announcement. "Maya Rodriguez, please report to admissions. Maya Rodriguez to admissions." Her knees nearly buckled. She gripped the door handle for support, fighting waves of dizziness that she told herself were just pregnancy symptoms, just low blood sugar, just anything other than the supernatural impossibility unfolding around her. When she'd bid on this place at the tax auction, the auctioneer had mentioned the mysterious fire that closed Mercy General. Something about faulty wiring in the pediatric wing. Thank God no children were hurt. The hospital couldn't afford the repairs and reconstruction. Insurance battles, corporate bankruptcy, the usual story of rural healthcare collapse that had played out across America for decades. But no one had mentioned anything about current operations, about staff, about patients whose names appeared on daily rosters like some kind of administrative ghost story. The classical music swelled slightly, and Maya recognized the piece now. Pachelbel's Canon, the same song that had played during her ultrasound appointment last week, when the technician had smiled and confirmed what Maya had somehow already known. She was carrying a daughter she'd planned to name Elena, after her grandmother, the same middle name that had somehow appeared on that impossible clipboard. Maya took a deep breath, tasting antiseptic and lily petals on her tongue, and made a decision that would change everything. Instead of continuing to fight the locked doors, she turned toward the admissions desk, where a small brass bell waited beside a sign reading "Ring for service." Sometimes moving forward into the impossible was the only way back to sanity. Maya's hand hovered over the brass bell, trembling. The weight of everything she'd left behind to get here pressed against her chest like a physical force. Just this morning, she'd been Maya Rodriguez the failure, evicted from her studio apartment, down to her last $43, sleeping in her car outside the 24-hour Walmart because the security guard there had kind eyes and pretended not to notice. The brass felt warm under her fingertips, as if someone else had just touched it. She thought of Elena, not her grandmother, but her daughter growing inside her, the daughter who deserved better than a mother who chased impossible dreams into abandoned buildings. Elena deserved stability, safety, a real home with working heat, and neighbors who didn't deal drugs in the hallway. That's why Maya had come to the tax auction in the first place. $20, the price of a decent meal, for 30 acres and a building that could theoretically be converted into something livable. She'd researched it obsessively in the public library, sketching floor plans on napkins, calculating how many small apartments could fit in the East Wing, how she could slowly renovate sections while living in others. Her phone buzzed with a text message, startling her back to the moment. The screen showed a photo of her former best friend Carla's newborn twins, followed by the message, "Thinking of you." "Still time to take our offer." Maya's throat tightened. Carla and her husband had offered to let Maya stay in their guest room after the baby came, help with childcare, get her back on her feet. It was generous, more generous than Maya deserved, after the way she'd pulled away from everyone following Marcus's betrayal and the lawsuit that destroyed her nursing career. But accepting their charity meant admitting defeat, meant acknowledging that the competent, independent woman she'd once been was truly gone. 3 years ago, she'd been Maya Rodriguez, pediatric nurse, beloved by her colleagues and trusted by parents to care for their most precious treasures. She'd had a condo with crown molding and a garden bathtub, a fiancé who brought her coffee in bed every Sunday, a future that stretched ahead like a well-lit highway. Then came the night shift that changed everything. 8-year-old Tommy Brennan, post-surgical, complaining of stomach pain that Maya had dismissed as normal recovery discomfort. She'd followed protocol, checked his vitals, administered the prescribed pain medication. But something had been wrong, something she should have caught, should have seen. By morning, Tommy was back in surgery for complications that left him with permanent damage. The lawsuit destroyed her professionally and financially. Marcus, who'd seemed so supportive at first, gradually grew distant as the legal fees mounted and Maya's depression deepened. She found their engagement ring on the kitchen counter one Tuesday morning, along with a note explaining that he needed space to figure things out. He'd figured it out, all right. 2 months later, she'd seen his wedding announcement in the paper. Apparently, he'd found clarity with his dental hygienist. The baby kicked again, stronger this time, and Maya placed both hands on her belly. She'd discovered she was pregnant just 3 weeks after the eviction notice arrived. The father was Jake, a kind EMT she'd met at a grief support group. Their relationship had been brief, intense, and ultimately impossible. Two wounded people trying to heal each other and failing spectacularly. He'd moved to Oregon for a fresh start before she'd even known about the pregnancy. She'd tried to reach him, leaving voicemails that went unreturned, sending emails that bounced back. Part of her was relieved. Jake had his own demons to fight, and she'd learned that loving someone didn't guarantee they'd stay when life got complicated. The intercom crackled again. "Maya Rodriguez, please report to admissions. Your room is ready." Her room. As if they'd been expecting her. As if this impossible, pristine hospital somehow knew that she needed sanctuary more than she needed logic. Maya thought about her grandmother, Elena, the woman she'd been named for, who'd fled Puerto Rico with nothing but courage and the clothes on her back. Abuela had always said that sometimes the universe conspired to put you exactly where you needed to be, even when you couldn't understand why. "Mia," she'd whispered during her final days in the hospital, a different hospital, one that smelled of disinfectant and despair. "Trust the path, even when it leads through darkness." The baby shifted, settling into what felt like a more comfortable position, as if she too was preparing for whatever came next. Maya had spent months paralyzed by fear and indecision, watching her life spiral beyond her control. But here, in this impossible place, she felt the first stirring of something she'd almost forgotten. Hope. Maybe it was supernatural. Maybe it was an elaborate hoax. Maybe she was having some kind of pregnancy-induced breakdown. But maybe, just maybe, it was exactly what it appeared to be, a second chance. Maya pressed the brass bell. The bell's crystal chime rang through the pristine lobby, pure and resonant as a church bell on Christmas morning. Maya pulled her hand back as if the brass had burned her, watching the sound waves seem to shimmer in the air before being swallowed by the impossible quiet that followed. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then footsteps echoed from somewhere beyond the reception desk, measured, professional steps that Maya recognized from her nursing days. The sound of sensible shoes on polished floors, the rhythm of someone who moved through hospitals like they owned them. A woman emerged from what Maya assumed was an administrative office, and every rational thought Maya had clung to crumbled to dust. The woman was perhaps 60, with silver hair pulled into a neat bun and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She wore a pristine white coat over navy scrubs, a stethoscope draped around her neck like a badge of office. But it wasn't her professional appearance that made Maya's breath catch. It was the name embroidered on her coat pocket, Dr. Helen Vasquez, Chief of Obstetrics. Maya knew that name. She knew it because she'd spent hours researching Mercy General's history after winning the auction, poring over old newspaper articles and medical journals in the library's dusty periodical section. Dr. Helen Vasquez had been the hospital's beloved chief of obstetrics from 1952 until her death in the 1987 fire that supposedly closed the hospital forever. The same fire that had happened 36 years ago. "Maya, dear, you look pale. Please sit down." Dr. Vasquez's voice was warm honey over steel, the tone of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. She guided Maya to one of the leather chairs beside the reception desk with gentle but firm hands. "You've had quite a shock, I imagine, finding us like this. You're dead." The words tumbled out before Maya could stop them. "You died in 1987. I read your obituary." Dr. Vasquez smiled, the expression creasing her face in lines that spoke of decades spent reassuring frightened mothers. "Did you? How thorough of you. Though I must say reports of my death have been greatly exaggerated." She settled into the chair across from Maya, crossing her legs with practiced ease. "Tell me, dear, how far along are you? 32 weeks? 33? 32, Maya whispered automatically, then shook her head violently. No, this isn't happening. I'm hallucinating. Low blood sugar, stress, pregnancy hormones. When did you last eat? The question was so mundane, so perfectly clinical, that Maya answered without thinking. This morning. A granola bar from the vending machine at the gas station. Goodness, no wonder you're feeling overwhelmed. You're eating for two now, Maya. Your daughter needs proper nutrition, especially at this crucial stage of development. Dr. Vasquez reached into her coat pocket and withdrew a small wrapped package. Crackers. Nothing fancy, but they'll help stabilize your blood sugar. Maya stared at the crackers as if they were a live grenade. Everything about this was wrong. The pristine hospital, the impossible woman, the way Dr. Vasquez spoke about her daughter as if she'd been monitoring the pregnancy personally. But her stomach chose that moment to growl audibly, a sound that seemed to echo through the marble lobby like thunder. "I should leave," Maya said, though she made no move to stand. "This is insane. People don't just disappear from history and show up decades later looking exactly the same. Hospitals don't maintain themselves for 36 years with no staff, no funding, no—" "Maya!" Dr. Vasquez's voice cut through her spiraling panic with surgical precision. "Look at me, dear." Against her better judgment, Maya met the woman's eyes. They were brown flecked with gold, intelligent and impossibly kind. Real eyes. Human eyes. "You came here tonight for a reason," Dr. Vasquez continued. "Not just because you needed a place to live, though heaven knows you do. You came because somewhere in your heart you knew you belonged here, that your daughter belongs here. My daughter belongs in a real hospital with real doctors when she's born, not in some supernatural—" "Who says we're not real?" The question hung in the air like incense. "You can feel my pulse." Dr. Vasquez extended her wrist toward Maya. "You can smell my perfume, white shoulders if you're wondering. Same one I've worn for 40 years. You can see my breath in this air conditioning. What exactly about me seems unreal?" Maya found herself reaching out, fingertips brushing against Dr. Vasquez's wrist. The pulse was strong, steady, exactly what she'd expect from a healthy woman. Warm skin, slightly papery with age, completely, utterly human. "This doesn't make sense," Maya whispered. "Sense is overrated," Dr. Vasquez replied. "You're a nurse, dear. How many things have you witnessed that didn't make sense? Medical miracles, inexplicable recoveries, patients who survived against impossible odds." The baby kicked then. A sharp jab against Maya's ribs that made her gasp. Dr. Vasquez's eyes immediately shifted to Maya's belly, her expression becoming professionally alert. "She's active tonight. That's good. It means she's strong." Dr. Vasquez leaned forward slightly. "Maya, I'm going to offer you a choice, and I want you to listen very carefully before you answer." Maya's hands instinctively covered her belly as Dr. Vasquez's words settled between them like a challenge. The baby's movements had quieted, as if even her unborn daughter was waiting to hear what impossible choice would be offered next. "I don't want to hear it," Maya said quickly, though she made no move to leave the chair. The crackers sat unopened in her lap, her fingers worrying at the cellophane wrapper. "Whatever you're about to say, whatever this place is offering, I can't. I won't." But Dr. Vasquez simply waited, her expression patient and knowing in the way that made Maya feel transparent. It was the same look her grandmother had worn during Maya's teenage years, when she tried to hide her heartbreaks and failures behind defiance. "You don't understand," Maya continued, her voice growing shakier. "I'm not the person you think I am. I'm not some brave woman who takes impossible leaps of faith. I'm the woman who killed a child through negligence. I'm the woman whose fiancé left her for someone more stable. I'm the woman who's been living in her car for 3 weeks because she's too proud to admit she needs help." The confession poured out of her like poison from a wound, each word more bitter than the last. She'd never said it all out loud before, not to the therapist she'd seen twice before the money ran out, not to Carla during their stilted phone conversations, not even to herself in the dark hours before dawn, when shame kept sleep at bay. "I destroy things," she whispered. "Everything I touch turns to ash. My career, my relationship, my life. What makes you think I won't destroy my daughter too?" Dr. Vasquez leaned back in her chair, studying Maya with the clinical detachment of someone assessing symptoms. "Tell me about Tommy Brennan." The name hit Maya like a physical blow. She doubled over slightly, one hand pressed to her mouth as nausea surged through her. "How do you know that name?" "You mentioned killing a child through negligence. In my experience, when nurses carry that particular guilt, there's usually more to the story." Dr. Vasquez's voice remained gentle but implacable. "What really happened that night, Maya?" "I followed protocol," Maya said automatically, the words she'd repeated to lawyers and investigators and sleepless mirrors. "I checked his vitals. I administered medication as ordered. I documented everything properly. But..." The single word cracked something open in Maya's chest. She found herself speaking before she could stop herself, telling this impossible woman things she'd never told anyone. But I knew something was wrong. The way he looked at me when I checked on him, this 8-year-old boy who'd been so brave through his surgery, suddenly terrified and trying not to cry. The way he held his stomach wasn't quite right. His color was off, just slightly, the kind of thing you notice after years of pediatric nursing but can't quantify in a chart. Maya's hands were shaking now, the unopened crackers crinkling in her grip. I almost called the attending. I stood at the nurse's station with the phone in my hand, ready to wake Dr. Martinez at 2 in the morning because of a feeling, a hunch. But Tommy's vitals were stable, his pain level was manageable, and I'd been working double shifts for 3 weeks. I thought I was just tired, paranoid, seeing problems that weren't there. "So, you didn't call?" "I didn't call." The words came out as a whisper. I told myself I'd check on him again in an hour. But we got slammed with 2 emergency admissions, and then it was change of shift, and I handed him off to the day nurse, thinking he'd had a quiet night. By noon, he was back in surgery with complications that could have been caught hours earlier if I, had trusted my instincts instead of hiding behind protocol. Dr. Vasquez nodded slowly. "And the lawsuit found you negligent because you failed to advocate for your patient, despite recognizing signs of distress." "The lawsuit found me negligent because Tommy's parents needed someone to blame, and I was the easiest target." Maya's voice cracked, but they weren't wrong. I had the knowledge and experience to know something was wrong, and I chose safety over courage. I chose following rules over saving a child. The baby kicked again, a gentle flutter that seemed almost like comfort. Maya looked down at her belly, imagining her daughter floating in the darkness, completely dependent on her mother's judgment and courage. "What if I make the same choice with her?" Maya asked, the question she'd been avoiding for months finally spoken aloud. "What if she needs me to be brave, to trust my instincts, and I choose the safe path instead? What if my cowardice hurts her the way it hurt Tommy?" Dr. Vasquez stood and moved to the window overlooking the parking lot, where Maya's battered Honda sat like a monument to all her failures. "The choice I'm offering," she said quietly, "requires exactly the kind of courage you think you lack. It requires trusting your instincts despite every rational thought telling you to run." Maya felt tears sliding down her cheeks. "I can't. I'm too afraid." "Good," Dr. Vasquez said, turning back to her with a smile. "Fear means you understand the stakes." The silence stretched between them, like a bridge Maya could either cross or burn. Her hands trembled as she finally tore open the cracker package, the mundane act somehow grounding her in this impossible moment. The saltines were fresh, crisp, tasting of nothing and everything at once. "What choice?" she asked, though part of her already knew she was damning herself with the question. Asking meant she was considering staying, considering believing in whatever this place truly was. Dr. Vasquez returned to her chair, settling with the practiced grace of someone who had delivered countless pieces of life-changing news. "We can provide everything you and your daughter need. Prenatal care from now until delivery, a safe place to live, proper nutrition, emotional support. A chance to raise your child in an environment where healing is possible." And the catch? Maya's nursing background had taught her that nothing this good ever came without consequences. "What's the price?" "The price," Dr. Vasquez said carefully, "is trusting us. Completely. No halfway measures, no keeping one foot out the door. If you stay, you become part of Mercy General. Part of our purpose here." Maya's rational mind screamed warnings. This was how horror movies started, Vulnerable woman accepts help from mysterious strangers, discovers too late that the cost is her soul or her sanity or worse. She should leave now, drive to the nearest real hospital, throw herself on their mercy and deal with the bills later. But as she sat in this impossible lobby with its fresh flowers and warm light, she felt something she hadn't experienced in months: safety. Not just physical safety, but the deeper kind, the feeling that someone was finally prepared to catch her if she fell. "What purpose?" she asked. Dr. Vasquez smiled, and for a moment her face seemed to shimmer, as if Maya were seeing her through water. "Every soul that comes through our doors arrives when they need us most. Mothers who have nowhere else to turn, children who require healing that extends beyond the physical, families torn apart by tragedy, seeking redemption." She leaned forward, her eyes intense. "You're not here by accident, Maya. You're here because you and your daughter have a role to play in something larger than yourselves." The baby moved then. Not a kick, but a rolling motion that felt almost like she was turning toward Dr. Vasquez's voice. Maya pressed her hand to the spot, feeling the solid reality of her child's presence. Real, warm, depending entirely on the choices her mother made in the next few minutes. "I need to see more," Maya said quietly. "If you want me to trust you completely, I need to understand what I'm trusting." Dr. Vasquez nodded as if she'd expected this request. "Of course. But understand, dear, once you go beyond the lobby, once you see what Mercy General truly is, there's no unknowing it. You can't pretend this was all a stress-induced hallucination. You'll have to make a choice with full awareness of what you're choosing." Maya thought of Tommy Brennan's frightened eyes, of her own cowardice in not trusting her instincts, of Marcus's engagement ring abandoned on her kitchen counter and Jake's unanswered voicemails, of 3 weeks sleeping in her car because pride had become more important than survival. "Show me," she said. Dr. Vasquez stood and extended her hand. Maya stared at it for a long moment, pale, slightly lined, wearing a simple wedding band that caught the lobby's impossible light, a real hand attached to a woman who should have died decades ago, offering guidance through a choice that defied every rational thought Maya possessed. She reached out and grasped Dr. Vasquez's fingers. They were warm, solid, reassuringly human. "There's an elevator just past the reception desk," Dr. Vasquez said, helping Maya to her feet. "We'll start with the maternity ward. I think you'll find it illuminating." As they walked toward the brass elevator doors, Maya caught a glimpse of herself in the polished marble wall. She looked small, frightened, her hand dwarfed by her pregnant belly. But for the first time in months, she didn't look defeated. There was something in her expression, a spark of the woman she'd been before Tommy, before Marcus, before everything fell apart. The elevator arrived with a soft chime. The doors opened to reveal an interior lined with rich mahogany and mirrors that seemed to reflect more light than they received. Dr. Vasquez gestured for Maya to enter first. "5th floor," she said as Maya stepped inside. "Labor and delivery." The doors closed with a whisper of sound that felt final as a coffin lid. Maya watched the floors tick by on the brass indicator. 2, 3, 4, each number bringing her closer to answers she wasn't sure she wanted to possess. But there was no going back now. She'd asked to see the truth, and Dr. Vasquez was going to show her exactly what kind of choice she was really making. The elevator stopped with a gentle bump. The doors opened onto whatever waited beyond. Maya stepped forward into the unknown. The maternity ward stretched before Maya like a vision from a medical journal, pristine white walls lined with soft watercolor paintings of mothers and babies, gleaming floors that reflected the warm overhead lighting, and the subtle scent of lavender mixing with that uniquely clinical smell of sanitized hope. But it was the sounds that made her breath catch, the gentle whoosh of incubators, the soft beeping of monitors, and underneath it all, the unmistakable murmur of newborn cries. "This is impossible," Maya whispered, her hand instinctively moving to her belly as they passed a glass-walled nursery filled with bassinets. Inside, she could see tiny forms wrapped in pink and blue blankets, their impossibly small fists waving in the air. "Where are the parents? The staff?" "The staff is here," Dr. Vasquez said gently. You're simply not ready to see them yet. As for the parents—" She paused beside one of the viewing windows. "Some stay, others find their way back to the world when their children no longer need our particular kind of care." Maya pressed closer to the glass, studying the babies. They looked so real. She could see the rise and fall of tiny chests, the way their faces scrunched in sleep, the occasional stretch and yawn. "Are they alive?" What an interesting question. Dr. Vasquez's reflection appeared beside Maya's in the window. "What does alive mean to you? Hearts that beat, lungs that breathe, souls that grow and learn and love." Before Maya could answer, a soft voice called from behind them. "Dr. Vasquez? Is this our new arrival?" Maya turned to see a woman approaching. Young, maybe 25, with tired eyes but a warm smile. She wore lavender scrubs and a name tag that read Jennifer, pediatric nurse. What made Maya's pulse quicken was the faded quality of the woman's appearance, as if she were a photograph left too long in sunlight. "Jennifer, meet Maya Rodriguez," Dr. Vasquez said smoothly. "Jennifer has been with us since 1995. She's wonderful with the babies." 1995, Maya repeated slowly. The implications were staggering. "How long have you been working here?" Jennifer's smile faltered slightly. "Time moves differently here. I was in a car accident driving home from my shift at Children's Hospital in Philadelphia. Drunk driver ran a red light." She shrugged with practiced acceptance. "I woke up here. Dr. Vasquez said the babies needed me, so I stayed." Maya felt the walls of reality shifting around her like tectonic plates. "You died." "Did I?" Jennifer tilted her head thoughtfully. "I mean, my body certainly stopped working in that wreck. But I'm still here, still helping children, still learning and growing. Death seems like such a limited word for what happened." The baby kicked sharply as if protesting this entire surreal conversation. Maya gasped and doubled over slightly, and immediately both women were at her side. Jennifer's hands were cool but steady as she helped support Maya's weight, while Dr. Vasquez checked her pulse with professional efficiency. "Just a strong kick," Maya managed. "She's been active today." "She's responding to the energy here," Jennifer said softly. "Children always do. They're more open to possibilities than adults." She glanced at Dr. Vasquez. "Should I prepare a room, just in case?" "Not yet," Dr. Vasquez replied. "Maya needs to understand what she's choosing first." They continued down the corridor, passing labor and delivery suites that hummed with quiet activity behind closed doors. Maya caught glimpses of other figures in scrubs, some solid and real-looking like Dr. Vasquez, others faded like Jennifer, and a few that seemed to shimmer in and out of existence entirely. "The rules here are simple," Dr. Vasquez explained as they walked. "We serve those who need healing, mothers, children, families broken by tragedy or loss. We provide care without judgment, without payment, without the limitations that constrain hospitals in the outside world. And the staff? Most of us came here the way Jennifer did, at moments when we had nothing left to give to the living world, but everything to offer to those seeking healing. Some, like myself, have been here since the beginning. Others arrive when they're needed most." Maya stopped walking. "You're saying everyone here is dead?" "I'm saying everyone here has moved beyond the constraints of ordinary life." Dr. Vasquez's voice remained maddeningly calm. "Death, life. These are labels the outside world uses to make sense of transitions it doesn't understand. What matters is purpose, Maya. What matters is the choice to serve something greater than yourself." They reached the end of the corridor, where a large window looked out over the hospital grounds. In the distance, Maya could see other buildings, what looked like a school, a small chapel, residential cottages nestled among gardens that bloomed with impossible vibrancy despite the grey evening light. "If I stay," Maya said quietly, "if I have my baby here, what happens to us?" Dr. Vasquez placed a gentle hand on Maya's shoulder. "That depends entirely on what you need, dear, and what your daughter needs. Some find healing and return to the world. Others discover their purpose lies in helping us care for those who come after. The choice crystallized before Maya like frost on glass. Surrender to this impossible sanctuary and trust in forces beyond her understanding, or walk away and face an uncertain future alone. Her daughter kicked once more, softer this time, as if she too were waiting for her mother's decision. Maya's hand trembled against the window as she stared out at the impossible grounds below. The gardens shouldn't exist, not in late October in Pennsylvania, not blooming with roses and lilies that caught light from a sun she couldn't see through the perpetual grey sky. Yet there they were, defying season and logic with the same casual impossibility as everything else in this place. "I need time to think," she whispered, though even as she said it, she could feel the weight of Dr. Vasquez's patient gaze. Time, as if that concept had any meaning here, where a nurse killed in 1995 looked barely older than Maya herself, where flowers bloomed eternal and electricity hummed through a building abandoned for decades. "Of course," Dr. Vasquez said, "but understand that your daughter may not grant us the luxury of extended deliberation. She's been more active since you arrived, hasn't she?" Maya's blood chilled. The observation was accurate. Her daughter had been unusually restless since she'd first stepped into the lobby, as if the strange energy of this place had awakened something in her. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that children, especially unborn children, are more sensitive to the veil between worlds. Your daughter can feel what this place truly is. She's responding to its call." A sharp cramp seized Maya's lower back, radiating around her belly with an intensity that made her gasp. She gripped the window ledge, her knuckles white against the painted wood. "That was a contraction," Jennifer said quietly, appearing beside them with the silent efficiency of someone accustomed to medical emergencies. "How far apart have they been?" "They haven't." "I'm not." Maya stopped, forcing herself to think. The cramping she'd attributed to stress and her car's uncomfortable seats, the way her back had been aching for the past few days, the strange pressure she'd felt since arriving at the hospital. Oh God. Dr. Vasquez was already moving, her hands gentle but firm as she guided Maya toward a nearby wheelchair that definitely hadn't been there moments before. "Let's get you to an exam room. We need to check your cervix and see where you are in the process." "I'm not ready," Maya said, panic rising in her throat like bile. "I haven't decided. I don't have insurance. I don't have a birth plan. I don't have anything ready." "Babies rarely wait for their mothers to feel prepared," Dr. Vasquez said with gentle humor as Jennifer wheeled Maya toward the elevator. "But you're safe here, Maya. Whatever you decide about staying, we won't abandon you while you need us." The elevator ride felt eternal and instantaneous all at once. Maya found herself studying Jennifer's face, searching for signs of the supernatural, the otherworldly. But all she saw was compassion, professional competence, and something that looked suspiciously like excitement. "It's been 3 months since our last delivery," Jennifer confided as they moved down a corridor. Maya was certain they hadn't traversed before. "We're all a little eager to welcome a new little one." "What happened to the last baby?" Maya asked, then immediately regretted the question when Jennifer's expression grew wistful. She was beautiful. Born to a teenager who'd been living on the streets. The mother stayed for 6 weeks, until she felt strong enough to face her family again. They reconciled, and the baby is growing up in a house full of love with grandparents who thought they'd lost their daughter forever. The exam room was smaller than the rest of the maternity ward, painted in soothing sage green with soft lighting that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. Maya allowed herself to be helped onto the examination table, the familiar crinkle of paper beneath her both comforting and terrifying. Another contraction gripped her, stronger this time, and she couldn't suppress a low moan. Dr. Vasquez was washing her hands at a sink that hadn't been there when they entered, her movements practiced and sure. "I need to examine you now," she said gently, "to see how far you've progressed." Maya nodded, spreading her legs and staring at the ceiling tiles that seemed to shift and move when she wasn't looking directly at them. Dr. Vasquez's hands were warm, professional, but Maya could feel something else in her touch, an energy that seemed to calm her racing heart and ease the panic clawing at her chest. "Well, Dr. Vasquez said after a moment, stripping off her gloves with a soft snap. You're at 4 centimeters and fully effaced. This baby is coming tonight, Maya. The only question now is whether you want to face it alone in some sterile hospital emergency room, or here, surrounded by people who understand that birth is sacred, regardless of circumstances. Maya felt tears streaming down her face before she realized she was crying. The weight of months of fear, guilt, and desperate loneliness crashed over her like a wave. She thought of Tommy Brennan's frightened eyes, of Marcus's disappointed face, of her own mother's voice growing cold and distant during their last conversation. "I'm so scared," she whispered. Jennifer took her hand, those cool fingers wrapping around Maya's with surprising strength. "Fear is just love wearing a disguise," she said softly. "And there's so much love here waiting for both of you." Another contraction seized Maya before she could respond, this one powerful enough to arch her back off the examination table. The pain was different now, purposeful, relentless, building to a crescendo that left her gasping. When it finally subsided, she found Dr. Vasquez studying her with an expression that mixed professional concern with something deeper, more ancient. 6 centimeters, Dr. Vasquez announced after another examination. Your daughter isn't waiting for us to sort through the metaphysics, Maya. She's decided it's time. The reality hit Maya like a physical blow. This was happening. Here, in this impossible place surrounded by people who might be dead, might be angels, might be something else entirely. Her baby was coming whether she understood the rules of this sanctuary or not. I don't know how to do this, Maya sobbed, gripping Jennifer's hand so tightly she was afraid she might hurt her. I've never been a mother. I don't even know how to take care of myself. Every mother feels that way, Jennifer said softly. I see it in their eyes, that moment when they realize they're about to be responsible for an entire human being. The secret is that nobody really knows how to be a parent until they are one. Dr. Vasquez was moving around the room with fluid efficiency, preparing equipment that materialized as she needed it. Maya watched in fascination and terror as monitors appeared, as 4 stands rolled themselves into position, as the sage-green walls seemed to pulse with a gentle, living light. This isn't a normal hospital, Maya gasped between contractions. None of you are normal people. What if something goes wrong? What if my baby... Look at me, Maya. Dr. Vasquez's voice cut through her rising panic with surgical precision. I have delivered over 3,000 babies in my career. First in the world of the living, then here. Not one has been lost under my care. Not one mother has died in this room. The power that sustains this place, that brought you here precisely when you needed us, do you really think it would allow harm to come to you or your child? Maya wanted to argue, to demand logical explanations and medical credentials, and proof of the impossible claims being made. But another contraction was building, and with it came something unexpected, a fierce, primal certainty that flooded her body like warm honey. Her daughter was coming, and Maya would move heaven and earth to bring her safely into the world. What do I need to do? She asked, and the words came out steady despite the tears still streaming down her face. Trust your body, Jennifer said, helping Maya shift position as another wave of pain crested. Trust us. Trust that you're exactly where you need to be. The labor progressed with startling speed. Maya lost track of time as the contractions intensified, each one bringing her daughter closer to the threshold between worlds. She found herself gripping the hands of these impossible women, drawing strength from their calm presence, even as her rational mind continued to scream that this couldn't be real. I can see her head, Dr. Vasquez announced, and Maya felt a surge of euphoria mixed with terror. She's crowning, Maya. Just a few more pushes. Maya bore down with every ounce of strength she possessed, her body taking over with an ancient knowledge that transcended fear. She could feel her daughter moving through her, could sense the moment of transition approaching like dawn breaking over a dark landscape. Push, Maya, Jennifer urged, her cool hand pressed against Maya's forehead. She's almost here. One final monumental effort, and suddenly the pressure released in a rush of warmth and fluid. Maya collapsed back against the pillows, her heart hammering as she waited for the sound she needed more than her next breath. A thin, indignant cry filled the room. Not the robust wail of movie babies, but the tremulous first song of a brand new soul announcing her arrival to the universe. Maya struggled to sit up, desperate to see her daughter, to know that she was real and whole and breathing. Dr. Vasquez lifted the tiny, perfect form, and Maya's world narrowed to the sight of her daughter, red-faced and wrinkled, impossibly small and yet completely herself. 10 tiny fingers, 10 tiny toes, dark hair plastered to her head, and eyes that seemed to look directly at Maya with an awareness that made her heart stop. "She's beautiful," Maya whispered, reaching out with trembling hands as Dr. Vasquez placed the baby on her chest. The weight of her daughter, warm and solid and utterly real, anchored Maya to the moment in a way that made everything else, the questions, the impossibilities, the fears, fade into background noise. Her daughter was here. Whatever this place was, whatever choice Maya had stumbled into, this moment was perfect and true and worth every terrifying step that had led her here. The baby's eyes found Maya's face and seemed to focus, and Maya felt something shift inside her chest, a fierce, protective love unlike anything she had ever experienced. In that instant, she understood with crystalline clarity that she would do anything, face anything, become anything this child needed her to be. Maya held her daughter close, marveling at the impossibly soft weight of her, when the first sign of wrongness appeared. Dr. Vasquez, who had been cleaning instruments with practiced efficiency, suddenly froze. Her hands, which moments before had guided Maya's baby into the world with supernatural grace, began to tremble. "Doctor?" Jennifer's voice carried a note Maya had never heard before. Uncertainty, fear. The warm light that had been emanating from the walls began to flicker like a candle in wind. Maya's daughter stirred restlessly against her chest, letting out a thin cry that seemed to echo strangely in the suddenly unstable air. "Something's wrong," Dr. Vasquez whispered, pressing her palm against the nearest wall. Where her hand touched, the sage-green paint seemed to ripple like water disturbed by a stone. "The foundation is shifting." Before Maya could ask what that meant, the room shuddered. Not an earthquake, something deeper, more fundamental. It felt like the space itself was coming undone, the careful reality that had sustained this impossible sanctuary beginning to unravel. "The outside world," Jennifer said, her faded form growing even more translucent. "They've found us." Through the window, Maya could see vehicles approaching the hospital. Police cars, ambulances, and something that looked like a government sedan. Red and blue lights cut through the perpetual grey sky like knives, harsh and intrusive against the soft glow that had surrounded the building. "I called them," Maya realized with growing horror. "The 911 call I made from my car. They traced it. They're coming for me." Dr. Vasquez moved to the window, her expression grave. 24 hours. "We've had patients labor for days here, but your daughter chose to arrive just as the authorities decided to investigate." She turned to Maya with eyes full of ancient sadness. "This isn't coincidence, dear. This is the price of touching 2 worlds at once." The building shuddered again, more violently this time. Medical equipment that had appeared through sheer will began to fade and solidify unpredictably. The 4 stand beside Maya's bed flickered in and out of existence like a broken hologram. "What's happening to the hospital?" Maya asked, clutching her daughter tighter as another tremor ran through the floor. "We exist in the spaces between official reality," Dr. Vasquez explained, gathering supplies with desperate efficiency. "When the outside world intrudes with forms, investigations, legal proceedings, our sanctuary becomes unstable. We can't maintain the bridge between worlds under that kind of scrutiny." Jennifer was backing toward the far wall, her form now so faded Maya could see through her to the medical charts hanging behind. "I'm losing cohesion," she said, her voice growing distant. "The connection that lets me exist here is breaking down." "No," Maya said, reaching toward the disappearing nurse. "You helped deliver my baby. You can't just—" But Jennifer was already more ghost than substance, her final words barely audible. "Take care of yourself, Maya. Take care of them both." She vanished entirely, leaving behind only the faint scent of lavender and the echo of kindness. Dr. Vasquez moved to Maya's bedside with urgent purpose. "Listen to me very carefully. In a few minutes, paramedics will burst through that door. They'll find you alone in an abandoned room, having given birth without medical assistance. They'll take you to a conventional hospital where you'll face questions about your mental state, your fitness as a mother." "But she's healthy," Maya protested, looking down at her daughter's perfect face. "The delivery was perfect. You helped us." "They won't see it that way." Dr. Vasquez's hands were beginning to fade now too, becoming translucent at the edges. "They'll see a troubled woman who broke into a condemned building and put herself and her child at risk. They'll see someone who needs psychiatric evaluation." The truth hit Maya like a physical blow. In the outside world, her story would sound like the delusions of someone having a complete mental breakdown. A pregnant woman breaks into an abandoned hospital, claims to be helped by ghost doctors, gives birth alone in a derelict building. It would be enough to have her daughter taken away before the umbilical cord was even cut. "What do I do?" Maya whispered, panic rising in her throat. But Dr. Vasquez was fading faster now, the approaching sirens seeming to drain her very essence. "Remember that love transcends all boundaries," she said, her voice growing faint. "Remember that some miracles can't be explained, only lived." The door burst open just as Dr. Vasquez disappeared entirely. Paramedics flooded in, their faces shocked at finding not an empty room but a woman who had just given birth, alone and bleeding on a rusty examination table in a building that should have been uninhabitable. Maya looked down at her daughter, the only proof that any of it had been real, and felt something precious slip away forever. The sanctuary, the impossible hope, the brief moment when she had believed the universe might actually care about protecting the lost and vulnerable. Now she was just another statistic, a single mother who'd made a dangerous, inexplicable decision, holding a baby whose very existence would be used as evidence of her instability. "Ma'am, we're here to help," the lead paramedic said, his voice carefully controlled as he took in the impossible scene. Maya watched his eyes dart around the room, the clean examination table that should have been rusted beyond use, the medical supplies that had materialized from nowhere, the sterile environment in a building that had been condemned for decades. "I'm okay," Maya managed, her voice hoarse from labor. "We're both okay." But even as she spoke, she could see the room changing around her. The sage-green walls were fading back to institutional beige, paint peeling and water-stained. The soft, healing light was being replaced by harsh fluorescent bulbs that flickered erratically. The medical equipment was disappearing piece by piece, leaving behind only rust and debris. "Jesus Christ! How did you get in here?" Another paramedic was setting up a gurney, his movements sharp with professional urgency. "This building has been sealed. The floors are structurally unsound." Maya shifted her daughter to one arm and tried to sit up straighter, wincing as pain shot through her abdomen. The beautiful delivery room was dissolving around her like a mirage, revealing the grim reality beneath: broken windows, exposed wiring, decades of abandonment and decay. "I bought it," she said weakly. "At the tax auction. I have the deed." The paramedics exchanged glances that spoke volumes. Maya could read their thoughts as clearly as if they'd spoken aloud. Postpartum psychosis, dangerous delusions, poor judgment endangering an infant. "Ma'am, we need to get you and the baby to a real hospital immediately," the lead paramedic said, gently but firmly taking her daughter from her arms, "for proper medical evaluation." As he lifted the tiny form, Maya saw something that made her heart stop. Wrapped around her daughter's wrist was a hospital bracelet, the old-fashioned kind with information typed on paper and sealed in plastic. Through the clouded plastic, she could make out text, "Baby girl Rodriguez," and a date stamp from today. But that was impossible. The paramedics hadn't brought it. The hospital had been abandoned for 37 years. Yet there it was, tangible, undeniable proof that something extraordinary had happened in this room. "Wait," Maya said, struggling to her feet despite the protests of the medical team. Look at the bracelet. Look at the—" She stopped mid-sentence as she caught sight of herself in the cracked mirror mounted on the far wall. Her hospital gown was clean and new, not the rotted fabric it should have been after decades of abandonment. Her hands, which should have been covered in dust and grime from exploring the derelict building, were spotless. Even her hair, though disheveled from labor, showed no signs of the dirt and debris that should have accumulated during her time in this place. They cleaned me up, she realized. Dr. Vasquez and Jennifer, they made sure I looked like someone who had received proper medical care, not like someone who'd given birth alone in a ruin. But as the paramedics lifted her onto the gurney, Maya caught a glimpse of something that changed everything. In the cracked mirror, just for an instant, she saw not her own reflection but that of another woman, olive-skinned, with graying hair pulled back in a neat bun, wearing surgical scrubs. Dr. Vasquez, still watching over her, even as the sanctuary crumbled. Their eyes met in the reflection, and Maya understood. The deed, Dr. Vasquez's voice whispered, so faint only Maya could hear it. Look at the deed. With trembling fingers, Maya pulled the folded document from her pocket, the $20 purchase that had started this impossible journey, but as she unfolded it, her blood turned to ice. The deed was dated 1987, not a recent tax sale, but the original transfer of ownership, and the name written in faded ink wasn't Maya Rodriguez, it was Elena Vasquez, M.D. The paper crumbled in her hands as the truth crashed over her like a tsunami. She hadn't bought this hospital. She had inherited it, not through family ties or legal proceedings, but through something far more profound and terrifying. Maya looked up at the paramedics, at the police officers now filling the doorway, at the social worker with her clipboard and concerned expression. They saw a disturbed woman who had endangered herself and her child through reckless behavior. They would never believe that she had been chosen, called to this place by forces beyond their comprehension. But Maya finally understood why her car had broken down exactly here, why the building had been unlocked, despite being sealed for decades, why Dr. Vasquez had been waiting for her with such certainty. She wasn't just a desperate woman who had stumbled into a supernatural sanctuary. She was Dr. Vasquez's successor, the next guardian of this impossible refuge for women with nowhere else to turn. The hospital hadn't been abandoned at all. It had been waiting. And now, it was hers. Maya closed her fist around the crumbling deed as the gurney rolled through corridors that now looked nothing like the pristine hallways she'd walked just hours before. The fluorescent lights buzzed and flickered overhead, casting harsh shadows on peeling paint and water-damaged walls. But she wasn't seeing the decay anymore. She was seeing possibility. I am Elena Vasquez's successor. The realization settled into her bones like medicine, warming her from the inside out. The terror and confusion of the past few days began to crystallize into something else entirely: purpose. She looked down at her daughter, sleeping peacefully despite the chaos around them, and noticed the hospital bracelet was still there, proof that the sanctuary was real, that she hadn't imagined the impossible. "Ma'am, we're going to transfer you to Mercy General in Allentown," the paramedic said as they reached the ambulance. "You and the baby need proper evaluation." "No," Maya said quietly, but with such certainty that everyone stopped. "Take us to Sacred Heart in Pittsburgh instead. That's over an hour away. I'm stable. The baby is stable, and I have family there." The lie came easily, but it wasn't entirely untrue. She needed time to think, to plan, and Sacred Heart was where she'd trained as a nurse. If she was going to face questions about her mental state, she wanted to be somewhere she had allies, former colleagues who knew her as competent, not the unstable woman these first responders were documenting. During the ambulance ride, Maya let the paramedics do their work while her mind raced. They found her vital signs perfect, her daughter's APGAR scores flawless. The delivery had been textbook despite the impossible circumstances. When they asked about pain medication, about who had attended the birth, she simply said she didn't remember clearly. The trauma of unexpected labor, the stress of being alone. Let them think what they wanted. Maya was busy planning. She remembered Dr. Martinez from her nursing days, a pragmatic woman who cared more about patient outcomes than bureaucratic procedures. If anyone would listen to an edited version of the truth, it would be her. Maya began constructing her story: car trouble, water breaking unexpectedly, taking shelter in the first building she could access, delivering alone but managing due to her nursing training. It wasn't the whole truth, but it was believable truth. At Sacred Heart, the emergency department buzzed with controlled chaos. Maya was wheeled into a private room where Dr. Martinez appeared within minutes, her familiar face creased with concern. "Maya Rodriguez? My God, what happened to you?" "Maria," Maya said, relief flooding through her at the sight of a friendly face. "I need your help." She told her simplified story, while Dr. Martinez examined both her and the baby. The physician's eyebrows rose at the quality of the delivery: clean cuts, proper cord clamping, no signs of complications. "For someone who gave birth alone in an abandoned building, you managed remarkably well," Dr. Martinez said carefully. "Almost impossibly well." Maya met her eyes steadily. "I had good training, and maybe a little luck." The next 6 hours blurred together: paperwork, evaluations, gentle but probing questions about her mental state. Maya answered everything with calm competence, drawing on her medical knowledge to explain her decisions. She submitted to the psychiatric evaluation, knowing that her nursing background and coherent responses would work in her favor. When Child Protective Services arrived, Maya was ready. She had a plan now, grounded in the impossible truth of her inheritance. She spoke of her savings, her plan to renovate the property into affordable housing, her recognition that she'd made a poor decision in exploring the building while pregnant, but her gratitude that everything had turned out well. "I want to help other women," she told the social worker, holding her daughter close. "Women who don't have anywhere safe to go. That building, it has potential. It just needs someone who understands what it could become." The social worker made notes, asked about support systems, about Maya's plans for childcare and income. Maya had answers for everything, her voice growing stronger with each question. She wasn't the desperate woman who had stumbled into the hospital 3 days ago. She was someone with purpose, with a mission that transcended her personal circumstances. Late that evening, after the last evaluation was complete, Dr. Martinez returned with the discharge papers. "Officially, you and baby Sophia are healthy and cleared to go home," she said, then lowered her voice. "Unofficially, I've seen a lot of strange things in 30 years of medicine. Whatever really happened in that building, it was good medicine. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." Maya looked down at Sophia. She'd named her during the psychiatric evaluation, honoring the wisdom she'd found in that impossible place. The baby's dark eyes seemed to hold ancient knowledge, as if she understood she'd been born in a space between worlds. "Thank you," Maya whispered. As they prepared to leave, Maya felt the weight of the crumbling deed in her pocket. Tomorrow, she would begin the real work, researching the building's history, understanding Elena Vasquez's legacy, learning how to maintain a sanctuary that existed in the spaces between reality. The hospital was waiting for her to return, and this time, she would be ready. The taxi pulled away from Sacred Heart Hospital just as dawn broke over Pittsburgh, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold that seemed impossibly hopeful. Maya held Sophia close, breathing in her daughter's sweet scent as they headed back toward the interstate, back toward Mercy General, back toward whatever waited for her in that impossible building. During the hour-long drive, Maya's mind churned with plans. She'd spent the sleepless night in the hospital researching everything she could find about Elena Vasquez on her phone. The obituary from 1987 painted the picture of a woman ahead of her time, a physician who had fought to provide medical care for undocumented immigrants, teenage mothers, women fleeing abusive relationships, someone who had believed that healing transcended bureaucracy and paperwork. The fire that had supposedly ended Dr. Vasquez's work suddenly made sense. Maya had found news articles describing the suspicious circumstances. No electrical faults, no accelerants, yet the administrative wing had burned while the medical facilities remained untouched, as if someone had wanted to destroy the records but preserve the sanctuary itself. Elena Vasquez hadn't died in that fire. She had transformed. Now, pulling up to the chain-link fence that surrounded Mercy General's property, Maya felt the familiar electric hum in the air. The building looked different in daylight, still abandoned, still crumbling, but somehow expectant, waiting. "You sure this is where you want to be dropped off, lady?" the taxi driver asked, eyeing the condemned structure with obvious concern. "There's nothing here." Maya paid him and stepped out with Sophia cradled in her arms. "There's more here than you can see," she said quietly. As the taxi disappeared down the rural highway, Maya approached the front entrance. The chains that had secured the doors hung open, just as they had 3 days ago. But now she understood. They had always been open for her. Elena Vasquez had been calling her here long before her car had broken down. The lobby was exactly as she remembered from her first terrifying exploration. Fresh flowers on the reception desk, soft lighting that had no visible source, the faint sound of classical music drifting from speakers that shouldn't have worked. But now, instead of fear, Maya felt recognition. This was home. "Dr. Vasquez?" Maya called softly as she walked toward the elevator bank. "I came back." The elevator doors opened with a gentle chime, revealing the same impossibly clean interior she remembered. As they rose to the maternity ward, Maya felt Sophia stir against her chest. Her daughter's eyes opened, dark and alert, and for a moment Maya could have sworn she saw understanding there, as if Sophia recognized this place too. The maternity ward was pristine and ready, exactly as it had been during those miraculous hours of labor. Dr. Vasquez waited in the nursery, no longer fading or translucent. She looked solid, real, eternally middle-aged in her clean surgical scrubs. "Welcome home, Maya," she said, her voice warm with satisfaction. "How did the outside world treat you?" "They think I'm either crazy or incredibly lucky," Maya replied, settling into the rocking chair beside the window. "Probably both," Dr. Vasquez smiled. "The best healers usually are." "Did you bring the deed?" Maya pulled out the crumbling document, now showing its true age of 37 years. "I understand now. You chose me." "But why?" "Because you see what others cannot," Dr. Vasquez said, moving to check Sophia's hospital bracelet, still perfectly intact despite everything. "Because you believe in medicine that transcends the possible, and because you're willing to pay the price." "What price?" Dr. Vasquez's expression grew serious. "The outside world will always see this place as abandoned, condemned, impossible. You'll have to maintain two realities, the one they can accept and the one we actually inhabit. Legal battles, inspections, bureaucrats who will never understand what we do here." Maya looked around the perfect nursery, then down at her daughter who had been born in this sanctuary between worlds. "And the reward? You'll save lives that no one else can reach. Women who fall through every other safety net will find their way here. You'll deliver babies that the world has given up on. You'll heal wounds that conventional medicine cannot touch." Through the window, Maya could see vehicles approaching again. County inspectors, building officials, lawyers. The consequences of her choices were catching up to her. But this time, she wasn't afraid. "I'll need to make this place legally habitable," Maya said, standing with new resolve. "Real permits, actual renovations, legitimate operations. If I'm going to be the guardian of this sanctuary, I'm going to do it right." Dr. Vasquez nodded approvingly. Elena Vasquez tried to work within the system. It destroyed her. "You'll find a better way." Maya walked to the window and watched the official vehicles park outside. Soon she would face questions about structural integrity, zoning violations, safety codes. They would see only an abandoned building that needed to be demolished. But Maya saw the future. A place where two realities could coexist, where bureaucracy served healing instead of hindering it. Where women like her would always find sanctuary. "Let them come," Maya said, holding Sophia close. "We have work to do." The officials climbed the front steps of Mercy General like an invasion force, their clipboards and measuring devices glinting in the morning sun. Maya watched from the maternity ward window as County Inspector Harold Webb led the charge, followed by the building commissioner, a structural engineer, and two lawyers whose expensive suits looked absurdly out of place against the hospital's Gothic facade. "They can't see what we see," Dr. Vasquez said, standing beside her. "To them, this is just another condemned building eating up tax revenue." Maya nodded, but her jaw was set with determination. She had spent the past hour walking through the hospital with new eyes, seeing both realities simultaneously: the pristine sanctuary that existed in the spaces between worlds, and the crumbling ruin that would greet the inspection team. The challenge wasn't just to protect the impossible, it was to make the impossible serve the possible. "I need to go down there," Maya said, adjusting Sophia in her arms. "If I'm going to be the guardian of this place, I need to start acting like it." She made her way to the elevator, but this time pressed the button for the basement level, a floor she had never explored. The doors opened to reveal a space that existed purely in mundane reality: a functioning boiler room, electrical panels with legitimate city inspection stickers dated just last week, and a small office containing decades' worth of meticulously maintained building permits and renovation records. Maya stared in amazement. Elena Vasquez had been planning for this moment for 37 years. The paperwork told an incredible story. The hospital had never actually been abandoned. It had been in continuous private ownership, with legal renovations and safety upgrades documented every year. The permits were genuine, the inspections real, the safety certificates current. Somehow, Dr. Vasquez had been maintaining a legal facade while operating in the supernatural realm. But now that responsibility was shifting to Maya. She found Harold Webb in the main lobby, his flashlight cutting through shadows that shouldn't have existed in the well-lit space she had just descended from. To him, the lobby was a disaster zone of broken tiles and water damage. To Maya, it remained elegant and welcoming. "Mr. Webb?" Maya called out, her voice echoing in the vast space. "I'm Maya Rodriguez. I believe you're here about the property inspection." Webb spun around, surprised to find anyone in the building. "Ma'am, this is a condemned structure. You shouldn't be in here, especially with a baby." "Actually, I'm the owner," Maya said calmly, producing the properly notarized deed she had found in the basement office, not the crumbling document from 1987, but a current legal transfer dated just 3 days ago. "I purchased the property through private sale. I believe there's been some confusion about the building's status." Webb examined the deed with growing bewilderment. "This says the property was sold by the Vasquez Medical Foundation. Our records show this building has been county property since the tax foreclosure." "Your records are outdated," Maya replied, handing him a folder thick with documentation. "The foundation maintained ownership through a legal trust. All taxes are current, all safety inspections up to date. You'll find everything in order." As Webb flipped through the papers, Maya watched his expression change from suspicion to professional respect. Every document was legitimate, every permit properly filed. The structural engineer was already nodding approvingly as he examined foundation reports and electrical certifications. "Mrs. Rodriguez," Webb said slowly, "these documents indicate the building has been undergoing continuous renovation for decades. But that's impossible. We've had this place marked as abandoned since 1987. "Bureaucratic oversight," Maya said smoothly. The foundation preferred to work quietly. They were preparing the facility for sale to someone who shared their vision. The building commissioner approached, studying his tablet with confusion. "Webb, the GPS coordinates don't match our condemned property database. According to this, we're supposed to be inspecting a lot 3 miles east of here." Maya felt Dr. Vasquez's presence like a warm hand on her shoulder. The supernatural was bending reality around the inspection, creating enough confusion to give Maya space to maneuver. "If you'd like to schedule a proper inspection," Maya continued, "I'd be happy to accommodate you. I'm planning to convert the facility into a medical clinic specializing in women's reproductive health and affordable housing. All work will be done to current code, of course." Webb looked around the lobby with new eyes, seeing not abandonment, but potential. The papers in his hands told the story Maya needed them to tell, of a legitimate medical facility ready for renovation, not a supernatural sanctuary existing between worlds. "We'll need to schedule a full structural assessment," he said finally. "But based on these documents, you're clear to proceed with preliminary renovation work." As the officials filed out, Maya felt the weight of her new reality settling around her. She would walk the line between two worlds, maintaining the bureaucratic facade that would protect the miraculous truth beneath. The real test was just beginning. As the officials' vehicles disappeared down the rural highway, Maya felt the building's atmosphere shift around her. The warm, protective presence that had guided her through the inspection began to withdraw, leaving behind something colder, more watchful. Dr. Vasquez materialized in the lobby, but her expression was no longer welcoming. "You've attracted attention we cannot afford," the ghostly physician said, her voice carrying an edge Maya had never heard before. The sanctuary was meant to remain hidden. Maya clutched Sophia closer, feeling her daughter's heartbeat against her chest. "I'm trying to protect this place. Those permits, the documentation, you provided all of that. Those were contingencies, meant for emergencies only." Dr. Vasquez's form flickered between solid and translucent, her agitation causing reality to blur around them. "Now they'll be back. They'll bring equipment, teams of investigators. They'll poke and prod until they find inconsistencies." The lights in the lobby began to strobe, and Maya heard the elevator machinery grinding ominously. The building itself seemed angry, wounded by the intrusion of official scrutiny. "What did you expect me to do?" Maya demanded, her own voice rising. "Let them tear this place down? Condemn it as a safety hazard?" "I expected you to understand the price of guardianship," Dr. Vasquez snapped, suddenly solid again, her eyes blazing with 37 years of frustrated purpose. "This sanctuary exists because it operates outside their world. The moment you invite their world in, everything we've built begins to die." The temperature in the lobby plummeted. Maya's breath came out in visible puffs as frost began forming on the windows. Sophia whimpered, sensing the supernatural tension crackling through the air. "I won't let you hurt my daughter," Maya said, backing toward the entrance. But the doors had sealed themselves, the electronic locks engaging with a sound like breaking bones. "Your daughter?" Dr. Vasquez laughed, a sound like wind through empty corridors. "Your daughter was born here. She belongs to this place as much as you do. More, even. She's never known any reality except ours." Maya ran for the stairs, but they began shifting beneath her feet, the architecture rearranging itself into impossible configurations. The hospital was alive, and it was angry. She could hear children's laughter echoing from the pediatric ward, but now it sounded predatory, hungry. "You can't leave," Dr. Vasquez called after her. "None of us can leave." That was always the price. Maya found herself in a corridor that hadn't existed moments before, lined with operating rooms whose doors hung open like mouths. In each one, she glimpsed surgical procedures in progress. But the patients were translucent, ghostly, and the surgeons wore Elena Vasquez's face. "How many?" Maya whispered, understanding flooding through her with horrific clarity. "How many women have you trapped here?" "Saved," Dr. Vasquez corrected, appearing at the end of the hallway. "I saved them all. Women who had nowhere else to go, babies who wouldn't have survived in the outside world. They found sanctuary here, just as you did, but they never left." Where would they go? Back to the poverty, the abuse, the systems that failed them. Dr. Vasquez spread her arms wide, encompassing the impossible architecture around them. Here they have purpose. Here they heal others. Maya felt the truth of it settling into her bones like ice water. The fresh flowers in the lobby, the meals that appeared in the cafeteria, the nursing staff she had glimpsed during Sophia's birth, they weren't supernatural manifestations. They were the women who had come before her, trapped in an eternal cycle of service to Dr. Vasquez's vision of perfect medicine. Sophia began crying, her wails echoing through the shifting corridors with supernatural amplification. The sound seemed to pain Dr. Vasquez, who clutched at her temples. "Stop that," she hissed. The children don't cry here. They know better. But Sophia's cries grew louder, and with them came something Maya hadn't expected, the sound of her own voice, strong and defiant. "You're not a healer. You're a collector." The words hit Dr. Vasquez like a physical blow. Around them, the hospital's impossible architecture began to crumble, revealing the true structure underneath, wards filled with ghostly women and children, all trapped in a beautiful prison of Elena Vasquez's making. "I gave them everything!" Dr. Vasquez screamed, her form expanding into something monstrous, all reaching arms and desperate eyes. Medical care, safety, purpose. What does the outside world offer except suffering? Maya stood her ground, Sophia's cries giving her strength. "Choice," she said simply. "It offers choice." The word hung in the air like a bell tolling, and for the first time since entering Mercy General, Maya felt truly free. The word choice reverberated through the collapsing corridors like a gunshot, and Dr. Vasquez's monstrous form contracted with pain. Around them, the ghostly women and children trapped in the wards began to stir, their translucent faces turning toward Maya with something that might have been hope. "You understand nothing," Dr. Vasquez hissed, but her voice carried less certainty now. "Without me, this place becomes just another abandoned building. The women who need sanctuary will find only empty rooms and broken dreams." Maya felt the weight of the choice crystallizing before her. Not just her own freedom, but the terrible responsibility of what would happen to Mercy General if she shattered Elena's carefully constructed reality. The hospital's supernatural abilities, its power to heal beyond the boundaries of medicine, all of it flowed through the ghostly doctor's tormented will. "There has to be another way," Maya said. But even as she spoke, she could feel the truth settling into her bones. Elena Vasquez had been sustaining this place through pure force of will for 37 years, feeding on the life force of every woman and child she had saved. Breaking that cycle would mean losing everything: the miraculous healing, the sanctuary between worlds, the safety it provided to those who had nowhere else to turn. Sophia's cries intensified, and Maya suddenly understood what her daughter was telling her. The baby had been born into this twisted reality, mocked by it, claimed by it. If Maya chose to stay and accept guardianship as Elena intended, Sophia would grow up as a prisoner of the hospital's supernatural hunger. But if she chose to break free, "The building will die," Dr. Vasquez said, reading the conflict in Maya's eyes. "Without someone to anchor it between worlds, it will collapse into ordinary reality. Just another ruin. All the women who would have found sanctuary here will suffer without our help." Maya looked at the ghostly forms around her, dozens of women and children trapped in eternal service, their own choices stolen in the name of protection. She thought of the women who might come after her, desperate and pregnant, seeking the same sanctuary she had found. They would arrive to find only broken glass and condemnation notices. "How many more?" Maya asked quietly. "How many more women would you trap to keep this place alive?" "As many as necessary," Elena replied without hesitation. "The work must continue." The monstrous honesty of it hit Maya like a physical blow. This was the true price of guardianship, not just her own freedom, but becoming complicit in Elena's endless cycle of benevolent imprisonment. Every woman saved would become another ghost in the machine. Every child born here would be bound to serve the hospital's supernatural appetite. Maya pressed her face against Sophia's soft hair, breathing in her daughter's scent. Alive, warm, utterly innocent. In 3 days, Sophia had become everything to her. The possibility of a future, of hope, of love, uncomplicated by duty or sacrifice. She was Maya's chance to build something new instead of maintaining something broken. "I choose Sophia," Maya whispered, and the words came out stronger than she expected. "I choose her future over your sanctuary." The effect was immediate and devastating. Dr. Vasquez screamed as if Maya had driven a stake through her heart, her form beginning to dissolve at the edges. Around them, the trapped souls flickered like candle flames, finally released from their eternal servitude. "You condemn them all," Elena shrieked. "Every woman who would have found safety here." No, Maya said, feeling clarity rush through her like cold water. I refuse to build safety on a foundation of prisoners. There has to be a way to help them that doesn't require stealing their freedom. The hospital's architecture shuddered and began collapsing into mundane reality. The pristine medical equipment flickered and became rust-covered antiques. The fresh flowers withered to dust. The impossible geometries straightened into ordinary hallways lined with broken tiles and water stains. But as Elena's supernatural influence dissolved, Maya felt something unexpected, not loss, but possibility. The building's legal documentation remained real. The permits were genuine. The foundation Elena had maintained for 37 years was substantial and legitimate. Maya could still convert Mercy General into a women's clinic, still provide sanctuary to those who needed it. It would be harder without supernatural intervention, requiring real funding and genuine bureaucratic navigation. She would have to build it properly, ethically, without trapping anyone in the process. The price was everything she had experienced: the miraculous healing, the perfect birth, the safety between worlds. In return, she gained something infinitely more precious: the knowledge that Sophia would grow up free to make her own choices. As the last of Elena's presence faded into memory, Maya found herself standing in an ordinary abandoned lobby, holding her daughter close. Through the grimy windows, she could see the real world waiting. Imperfect, difficult, but honest. She had chosen love over power, freedom over safety, hope over certainty. The sacrifice was complete. Maya stood in the silence that followed Elena's dissolution, her breath visible in the suddenly cold air of the abandoned lobby. Sophia had stopped crying, as if sensing that the supernatural tension had finally broken. The baby's eyes, so alert for someone only 3 days old, gazed up at Maya with what looked almost like understanding. The building around them settled into mundane reality with creaks and groans, like an old house adjusting to new weather. Dust motes danced in the pale afternoon light, filtering through grimy windows that no longer gleamed with impossible cleanliness. The elegant marble floors had become cracked concrete scattered with debris. Even the air smelled different, stale and musty instead of antiseptically pure. Maya walked slowly through the lobby, her footsteps echoing in the vast space. She could see it now as it truly was, a gutted hospital that had been abandoned for decades, its glory days long past. Water stains marked the walls where rain had leaked through damaged roofing. Broken tiles crunched under her feet. The reception desk was a warped shell of what it had once been. Yet as she surveyed the decay, Maya felt something she hadn't expected: excitement. This was real. This was hers. This was a project she could actually build, brick by brick, permit by permit, without supernatural shortcuts or ethically compromised miracles. She found herself in the cafeteria, where she had eaten impossible meals prepared by ghostly hands. Now was just an empty room with industrial-sized windows and good natural light, perfect for a community meeting space. The old kitchen could be converted into examination rooms. The pediatric ward upstairs would need extensive renovation, but the bones of the building were solid. Sophia stirred against her chest, making the small squeaking sounds that meant she was hungry. Maya realized with a start that she would need to figure out feeding soon. There would be no more supernatural assistance, no meals appearing when needed, no invisible nursemaids to help with the baby's care. She was truly on her own now. The weight of that responsibility should have terrified her, but instead, it felt liberating. Every challenge would be hers to solve, every success earned honestly. Sophia would grow up knowing that the good things in her life came from hard work and genuine care, not from supernatural bargains with hidden prices. Maya made her way to the basement office where she had found Elena's legal documentation. The permits and certificates were still there, still real, but now she could see them for what they truly were. Not magical manifestations, but the meticulous work of a woman who had spent decades preparing for this moment. Elena Vasquez might have lost her way in the end, but her early vision had been sound: create a place where women could receive medical care without judgment, where children could be born safely regardless of their mother's circumstances. The foundation's bank statements showed substantial assets, enough to begin real renovations if managed carefully. Elena had been funneling money into legitimate investments for 37 years, building a war chest for the day someone would need to transform Mercy General from supernatural sanctuary to actual medical facility. Maya spread the papers across the dusty desk, Sophia sleeping peacefully in the crook of her arm. She began sketching plans on the back of an old invoice: examination rooms here, a pharmacy there, offices for social workers and counselors who could help women navigate the real-world systems they needed. It wouldn't be as immediately powerful as Elena's solution, but it would be honest. It would be sustainable. And most importantly, it would be a choice, not a trap. Her phone buzzed with a text message, the first communication from the outside world she had received since entering the hospital. It was from her former supervisor at Pittsburgh General, asking if she was still interested in the part-time consulting position they had discussed before her pregnancy. The timing felt like a sign. Maya looked around the basement office, then at her sleeping daughter, then at the sketched plans taking shape on the paper before her. She typed back quickly. "Yes, but I'll need flexible hours. I'm starting a women's clinic in rural Pennsylvania." The response came within minutes. "Sounds ambitious. Let me know if you need any equipment donations." Maya smiled, feeling pieces click into place. The medical community was smaller than most people realized, and word of mouth could accomplish miracles that didn't require trapping souls or bending reality. She began mentally cataloging the connections she had made over her years as a nurse: doctors who believed in accessible care, administrators who had fought for funding for underserved populations, social workers who understood the gaps in the system. She wouldn't be doing this alone. She would be doing it honestly. As the afternoon light began to fade, Maya gathered the papers and made her way back upstairs. Tomorrow she would drive into town and begin the real work: finding contractors, scheduling inspections, applying for grants. Tonight, she would figure out where she and Sophia could stay while they began building their future. The abandoned hospital felt different now, not haunted but hopeful, ready for resurrection. The drive to town felt like crossing between worlds. Maya gripped the steering wheel with hands that still trembled slightly, Sophia sleeping peacefully in the car seat behind her. Through the rearview mirror, she watched Mercy General shrink into the distance, just another abandoned building now, its Gothic spires no longer imposing but merely old. The normalcy of the outside world struck her with overwhelming force. Traffic lights blinked red and yellow. A teenager on a bicycle pedaled past, earbuds in, completely unaware that he was sharing the road with someone who had just escaped a 37-year-old supernatural trap. The mundane details felt precious: road salt crunching under her tires, a McDonald's sign promising familiar mediocrity, the smell of autumn leaves through her partially open window. Maya pulled into the parking lot of the motel where she had spent her last night before entering the hospital. It felt like a lifetime ago, though only 4 days had passed. The same desk clerk was working, a tired-looking woman in her 50s who glanced up from her crossword puzzle. "Back again?" the clerk asked. Then her eyes fell on the baby carrier in Maya's arms. Her expression shifted to surprise, then something warmer. "Well, I'll be damned. When did you have that little one?" 3 days ago, Maya said, realizing how impossible that sounded. She looked exhausted but healthy, certainly not like someone who had given birth mere days earlier. But the clerk's expression remained kind, accepting. "Congratulations, honey. You need a room, just for tonight. Maybe a few more nights while I figure some things out." The clerk slid a registration form across the counter, her movements gentle. "First baby?" Maya nodded, surprised by the normalcy of the conversation. After days of supernatural encounters and impossible architecture, discussing room rates and checkout times felt surreal. "They change everything," the clerk said softly. "My daughter's 32 now, but I still remember that feeling of being responsible for this whole other person. Terrifying and wonderful at the same time. Terrifying and wonderful." The phrase echoed in Maya's mind as she settled into the modest motel room. She had traded the hospital's supernatural perfection for this: a queen bed with a floral comforter, a mini fridge that hummed too loudly, thin walls that let her hear conversations from adjacent rooms. But it was real, it was honest, and more importantly, she could leave whenever she chose. Sophia woke hungry, and Maya experienced the simple miracle of feeding her daughter without supernatural assistance. Her body knew what to do, had always known. Elena's intervention hadn't been necessary, just convenient, and that convenience had come with a price Maya was grateful she had refused to pay. Later, as evening shadows stretched across the parking lot, Maya called her sister Carmen in Phoenix. "Maya, Jesus, I've been worried sick. You disappeared for 4 days. I was about to call the police." "I'm sorry," Maya said, and meant it. She had been so consumed with the hospital's supernatural pull that she had forgotten about the people who loved her in the regular world. "I had the baby." "What? You had Maya? What the hell? Are you okay? Where are you? Do you need me to fly out there?" The concern in Carmen's voice brought tears to Maya's eyes. This was what she had chosen. Messy, complicated love from people who couldn't offer miracles, but who cared enough to worry. "I'm okay. We're okay." "Her name is Sophia." "Sophia," Carmen repeated, and Maya could hear the smile in her voice. "That's beautiful. Tell me everything." Maya found herself editing the story heavily, focusing on the parts that made sense in the regular world. Buying the hospital at auction, deciding to renovate it into a clinic, giving birth during the process. She left out the supernatural elements, the ghostly doctor, the impossible architecture. Even to her sister, it sounded ambitious but achievable. "So, you're really doing this? Starting a clinic from scratch?" "I think so," Maya said, looking down at Sophia's sleeping face. "It feels right." "You always were the brave one," Carmen said. "Mom would have been proud." After they hung up, Maya sat in the gathering darkness, processing the day's transformation. She was no longer the desperate woman who had stumbled into Mercy General 4 days ago. The pregnancy had changed her body, but the hospital had changed something deeper, her understanding of what she was capable of, what she deserved, what she was willing to fight for. Tomorrow she would begin the slow work of building something real, permits and contractors, funding applications and medical licensing, the 1,000 small bureaucratic steps that Elena had bypassed with supernatural shortcuts. It would take years instead of days, cost far more than $20, require compromises and setbacks and moments of doubt. But it would be hers. It would be Sophia's legacy, built on choice rather than coercion, sustained by community rather than trapped souls. Maya pulled the curtains closed and prepared for her first ordinary night of sleep in days, grateful for its beautiful, imperfect honesty. The new beginning. 3 months later, Maya stood in what had once been Mercy General's main lobby, watching contractors install new windows. The November air was crisp, and actual sunlight, not supernatural illumination, streamed through the glass, revealing dust motes and honest imperfections. Sophia gurgled contentedly from her carrier, fascinated by the rhythmic sounds of construction. The transformation had been slower than Elena's supernatural renovations, but infinitely more satisfying. Each improvement was earned through real work, grant applications that Maya had written during Sophia's naps, permit meetings where she'd learned to navigate small-town bureaucracy while wearing baby spit up on her shoulder, fundraising calls made while walking the hospital's grounds, imagining what they could become. "Ms. Rodriguez?" Maya turned to see Janet Morrison, the contractor's wife, approaching with a clipboard and a warm smile. Over the past month, the Morrison family had become more than hired help. They were partners in the vision, understanding that this project meant something beyond profit margins. "The electrical inspection passed," Janet announced. "And Dr. Patterson from the County Health Department wants to schedule a walkthrough next week." Dr. Patterson. Maya had met her at a community health fair, where she'd boldly introduced herself and her impossible dream of converting an abandoned hospital into a women's clinic. Instead of dismissing her as naive, Dr. Patterson had listened, then offered guidance through the labyrinthine process of medical facility licensing. "That's wonderful," Maya said, bouncing gently to keep Sophia settled. The pharmacy consultation room should be finished by then. Maya had learned to speak this new language of realistic timelines and building codes, so different from the instant gratification Elena had provided. But with each milestone reached through legitimate channels, her confidence grew. She was building something that couldn't be dissolved by supernatural whims or ethical compromises. Her phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Sarah Chen, her former colleague from Pittsburgh General. Equipment donation truck arrives Thursday, including the ultrasound machine, barely used. You're going to cry when you see it. The medical community's response had exceeded Maya's wildest expectations. Word had spread through professional networks about the nurse who was opening a low-cost clinic in an underserved rural area. Equipment donations arrived weekly. Dr. Martinez, who had delivered Sophia at her previous hospital, had agreed to volunteer 2 days a month once they opened. A social worker from Philadelphia had inquired about a full-time position. Most unexpectedly, 3 women from the surrounding counties had already contacted Maya about prenatal care. Word traveled fast in small communities, and apparently the story of a single mother renovating an abandoned hospital had captured imaginations. These women needed exactly what Maya was building: accessible care without judgment, support without condescension. Sophia began fussing, and Maya automatically shifted into the familiar rhythm of soothing her daughter. No supernatural assistance, just the ordinary magic of learning her baby's needs through trial, error, and stubborn love. Sophia was thriving, growing chubby and alert, reaching for sunbeams and smiling at construction workers who stopped to coo over her. Maya walked through the partially renovated halls, Sophia's carrier bumping gently against her hip. The pediatric ward was taking shape, painted in soft yellows and greens that actual children had helped choose during a community input session. The examination rooms were smaller than Elena's impossibly spacious ones, but they would serve their purpose honestly. In the basement office, now her official workspace, Maya spread the latest blueprints across a second-hand desk. The clinic would be modest when it opened in the spring, serving perhaps 20 patients a week initially. It wouldn't save hundreds of women like Elena's supernatural sanctuary had claimed to do, but every woman who received care here would leave free to make her own choices, and that felt like a miracle worth years of bureaucratic patience. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Carmen stood in the doorway, holding coffee and wearing a grin that had become familiar over her extended visit. The social services office approved the childcare partnership, Carmen announced. They'll provide a part-time coordinator to help patients navigate assistance programs. Carmen had extended her planned week-long visit indefinitely, claiming she needed a break from Phoenix but obviously wanting to help her sister build something extraordinary. Having family support made everything possible: someone to hold Sophia during contractor meetings, someone to celebrate small victories, someone who understood both the magnitude of Maya's transformation and the ordinariness of daily life with a newborn. "We're actually doing this," Maya said, accepting the coffee gratefully. "You're doing this," Carmen corrected. "I'm just here for moral support and baby snuggles." As afternoon shadows lengthened across the construction site, Maya felt the deep satisfaction of work that aligned with her values. Tomorrow would bring new challenges: licensing hurdles, funding gaps, the 1,000 small crises of starting a business. But tonight, she would go home to the small apartment she was renting in town, feed her daughter, maybe read a few pages of a novel before exhaustion claimed her. It was an ordinary life, beautiful in its honesty. Maya Rodriguez had found her sanctuary not in supernatural protection, but in the choice to build something good with her own hands, for her own reasons, in her own time. Sophia reached for the sunlight streaming through the windows, and Maya smiled, knowing her daughter would grow up understanding that the best things in life were worth working for.